I think it's fair to say that 2018 has been a strange year. It's becoming very hard to keep up with everything going on as there's almost something new every single day. For this channel, it's felt kind of similar. As I sat writing this and looking over all the videos I released this year, it's crazy to think about everything that was accomplished, and all the exciting projects coming up in the new year. First off, I just want to say a huge thank you for coming on this wild journey with me, and I look forward to another year of open source science. But today I want to look back on some of my favorite videos from the past year, as well as some of the most popular. This time last year, I was still in Florida, and as someone who spent a fair bit of time there, I think I can safely say that Florida is as crazy as it's made out to be. I got to spend some time at SciHouse and use a very fancy mammalian lab for all sorts of different projects. We built a freeze dryer from scratch, made cryogels, and even extracted live T cells from whole blood. And of course, there was the lactose project where I grew a special virus to attempt to try and fix my lactose intolerance, which worked quite well if I'm honest. There was a lot more that got done, and many of the projects that got started are still underway, so I look very forward to showing off the results in the new year as progress is made. One of my favorite videos of the year was made during my time in Florida. The video focused on a type of stain called Orsian that's often used in the laboratory, and the implications it had on the field of biology. What most people don't realize is that without that stain, biology wouldn't be what it is today. The issue is that most biology is nearly transparent when you look at it under a microscope, so without some kind of stain, it's nearly impossible to figure out what's going on. However, with Orsian in hand, some of the most important aspects of biology started to be uncovered. First, the nucleus was discovered, followed shortly by mitosis and cell division, chromosomes, and eventually inheritance patterns. We looked at how you can prepare the same samples that led those early biologists to make those discoveries, and showed how difficult it is to miss once you've stained things properly. All thanks to a simple fungi-derived dye. Speaking of which, that same fungus, if treated slightly differently, produces a different dye. You're probably familiar with this one, litmus, so it helped get chemistry going as well. Later in the year, we pivoted a little bit and focused on plants more generally, and got a chance to use one of my favorite dyes, Ludian Blue. We looked at how you can cut single-cell thick slices of plants, and then stain them to learn all about their hidden inner piping. Both of those videos were made possible largely because of the new DSLR I purchased this year. This is my first proper camera I've owned, and I've absolutely loved putting it through its paces, and learning all the ins and outs. It's not the nicest or the newest, but I love it, and I think it's been absolutely worth the investment. The new camera, in concert with my trusty microscope, has proven to be invaluable all year, and has led to some great content, including those two previous videos. We also took amazing macro photos of tiny things, modified the microscope to see polarized light, and hopefully soon will crack fluorescent microscopy as well. On the topic of cameras, my most popular video this year by far, getting more than 600,000 views, was the Wi-Fi camera series. We did a lot of radio projects this year, and this one was a lot of fun. Over the course of 3 videos, we built this little robot named Cogsworth with a single purpose: show us what the world would look like if we could see the Wi-Fi that surrounds us. First, we took a picture of the inside of our workspace and could clearly see the router through the walls of the server shed. Then we took our robot outside and could see all the routers in our entire building. I'll be honest, going into that project I wasn't really sure if it would work, so we were overjoyed when it did, and almost on the first try. Well, first try after we finished fighting with the terribly built mechanism. Now, of course, we can't mention Cogsworth without mentioning his younger brother, Pipsqueak. This one was a fun build, and you can see that I learned a lot from Cogsworth. The quality was higher, the parts were machined much more carefully, and I think the result was fantastic. While he still isn't perfect, I'm so excited to put him to work, just as soon as the snow melts and it's not -20 outside. However, with the new metal lathe in the shop, I think Pipsqueak will get an overhaul before he sees real service. While the build quality was better, I know I can still do better, and we're going to need to since we plan on building a ray dome to keep him safe and mount him on the roof of a building to be controlled remotely. So expect that build in early spring. For now, Pip is going to serve as lovely decoration for the lab. Even though Pip himself didn't get to see field use, his face did. The antenna was originally purchased for a single purpose, long before we decided to build the tracking mount for it. That purpose brought to a close a story arc that was started years ago during an earlier visit to Florida. I got to see my first rocket launch, and aboard that launch was NASA's newest weather satellite, GOES-16. Unlike the NOAA satellites we looked at last year, GOES is in geostationary orbit, meaning it's much further away and can see more of the Earth in the images it takes. And since it's shiny and new, all the optics on board are incredible. It took some doing, but we eventually managed to get some data off the satellite and were greeted with a live feed of stunning views of the globe for as long as we pointed the antenna at it. And while that story arc is over, we aren't done with GOES. In the summer, we'll return to GOES and start to chase the other signals it puts out that contain even higher res images and a wealth of data that dwarfs everything we managed the first time. And finally, we come to the last major set of projects which have been underway for the last few months. First, we built the new biolab, stocked it, and then quickly got to work. We brewed glowing mead, built equipment, and have made slow but steady progress on the biggest project of this and likely next year, growing spider silk in an engineered strain of yeast. That project really is massive, so I would suggest watching the intro video I made about it. I'll be taking you through every step of the project and explaining it so that even if you have no bio background, hardcore genetic engineering won't seem like the dark magic it's often presented as. It's just baking, but with more expensive ingredients that potentially make really unappetizing beverages at the end. Some of the tutorials I've put out so far include how PCR works, how to build a gel box and gel dock, and how to do basic transformations, but I've got so many more planned or already filmed. On the topic of biology and genetic engineering, I'll be working to make my lab into a registered iGEM lab, and while we're not sure if we'll be competing this year, we will for sure next year. Even if we don't compete, being an iGEM lab means I can order from the iGEM parts registry, which if you haven't seen it, it's amazing. Think of it like GitHub, but for the biology world. Thousands of pieces of code made by former competitors available to anyone to use. I've already got a few picked out, including a host of different color proteins and several biosynthetic pathways. We'll also be looking at optogenetics, isolating organisms, biodegradation, and so much more. And finally, to wrap things up, I need to say a second huge thank you. This year has seen a massive rise in Patreon supporters and now channel members, and I honestly can't thank you all enough. You've made this channel possible and made the move from Florida to Montreal as painless as possible. Before the move, I asked for your help in keeping this channel alive, and not only did you all come out in droves, with your help this channel has grown tremendously. We passed 100,000 subscribers, and I finally got that silver play button, and it looks like this year is on track for even more growth. Who knows, maybe with your help I'll get that gold play button soon. All I know is that I'm so excited for the year to come, and if you thought this past year was crazy, just wait until you see what I've got in store for this year. So be sure to subscribe so you can come on this crazy journey through the world of scientific innovation with me. That's all for now, and I'll see you next week with new exciting content.